Hey everyone, I just wanted to say before we get into this video, very happy International Women's Day to all you lovely women out there. I've been wanting to do this video for a while. It's been on my mind for like a year, and I thought what a great idea it would be on International Women's Day to honor all the great female artists that I love more than anything. And yeah, I just wanted to take this day as an opportunity to talk about my top 10 favorite female artists. And before we get into this, just a couple of things. There aren't going to be any duos on this list, and there aren't going to be any bands because, let's be honest, there's not too many all-female bands. And look, I'm not putting the Go-Go's on here, okay? So immediately, I'm just setting the record straight there. And yeah, let's get right into it. Now, for my number 10 spot, I just want to say, before we get into this, there's many female artists I could have put on this list that perhaps I haven't fully gotten into their discography yet. Like Nina Simone, I think, has a very good possibility to eventually make it onto this list. And I also want to shout out my girl Billie Eilish, because she probably would have been number 11. She easily could be number 10 by the time she puts out an album, hopefully this year. So we'll see how that turns out, and I think easily she could top who I have at my number 10. I'd say with certainty she would if the next album is great. But at my number 10 right now, I have Adele. I mean, yet again, it's one of those things where there are artists who perhaps I like certain albums by them better than Adele, like Amy Winehouse sort of thing. But Adele, just in general, when I look back in time, and I remember when Adele hit the scene, I was in middle school, and you could not escape all of the songs off of 21, like I Set Fire to the Rain, Rumor Has It, Rollin' in the Deep, of course, Someone Like You. I mean, these were all over the radio, turning tables as well. And I was always amazed by her prowess as a vocalist, of course. But yet again, she really brought that sense of classic soul back into the mainstream with an absolute bang, if I've ever heard one. And the thing that's so amazing about Adele overall, but especially in that period of time, just such a timeless sound with such an iconic voice that it really is a coupling that you couldn't even match to this day. And I think that's why Adele stands out to me so much. On top of the numerous hits she's had afterwards, even into the 20s, and I hope that she continues to step up the game, because in some ways you could criticize Adele for playing it fairly safe, but yet again, when you have a voice that good, when you can sing ballads like that and absolutely wow the socks off of people, I think she's still in a very solid position. And also, I just think she seems like such a genuine, funny, caring human being, and I think that definitely goes a long way into factoring people who I do like. Granted, some of my favorite artists of all time aren't the greatest of people, but I don't think that is the case with Adele. And yeah, I'm always going to be excited when Adele drops anything, and I cannot wait to see what she does next. And at number 9, I have none other than Janelle Monae. Now, of course, Janelle does identify as non-binary, but a lot of her music is defined by black womanhood and her sensibilities as such. And so I definitely have to give it up for Janelle Monae here, who I think, for the most part, has been incredibly consistent with her work. And whether her most recent work is on the same level as some of the stuff that she's given us before, I still think, in general, Janelle Monae is one of the most multifaceted and multi-talented people in the entire industry. I mean, not only is she a great dancer, entertainer, lyricist, rapper, and singer, she's also a quite capable actor that has been proven many times, especially most recently in Glass Onion. And I just think that she is such a threat when it comes to all of those things. and it coalesces in such a wonderful way. She's combining art pop and, of course, her influences that range from James Brown, Outkast, Prince, and also bringing in a lot of musical theater into the mix. I mean, there's so many influences that Janelle Monae is pulling from. Stevie Wonder is another one that comes to mind. And I think she's created some of the most interesting albums from a conceptual standpoint, like the ArchAndroid, especially the Electric Lady, which I think is probably one of the greatest dance R&B albums of all time, and just one of the best albums in general. I really, really love what she does on that record, and I think from a production standpoint, even if the certain elements of the production seem like they're trending more towards the mainstream, I still think that she's exploring so much interesting territory within that I still have to give her a lot of credit. Now, I wasn't as huge of a fan of her last album, but yet again, she is one of the most creative people in the industry that I'm always going to be excited to see what Janelle Monae does next. And absolutely love that woman. There's so much I could say and more, but yeah, Janelle Monae is certainly one of the most talented artists of her generation. And at number 8, I have the brilliant Kacey Musgraves, who I think is, quite frankly, the modern savior of country music. And I think what Kacey Musgraves did that was so brilliant, not only does she bring an insatiable amount of wit to all of her songs, are so clever, especially her early stuff off of the, Same Country, Different Park, but she really brings a modern sensibility to country that not only harkens back to what the roots of the genre originally was, about the downtrodden American, and, just these relatable storytelling songs that, really speak to the human experience. But she also brings such an open-mindedness that isn't really found in country music nowadays when we're just talking about beers and trucks and women. You really lose a lot of that in the midst of all the shit, to be quite honest, that populates that genre. But not only does she bring, most of the time, a lot of tasteful arrangements to these songs, and just melodies that are so earwormy that they just stick with you and stay with you for such a long time. But she's really has so much to say about the genre, especially about being a woman in country music and just being a woman in general. I think her music really speaks to that. I think she has a lovely voice. I think she is such a brilliant songwriter, and I think overall might even give Taylor Swift a run for her money, to be quite honest. I think she's absolutely brilliant, and I really think that she hasn't made anything that I would consider less than good. I know a lot of people weren't as huge on Starcrossed, but literally every other album that she basically done before that I've loved. Even the Christmas album I didn't quite love, but still, the fact that this woman's like writing an original Christmas album for the most part in today's day and age is something that is kind of hard to come by. I think there's so much about her that just strikes me as so down to earth, so in tune with what it means to be a human being in general. And I cannot wait for next week to hear her new record. I haven't even listened to the singles yet. Maybe I've been, staving myself off for the actual album, and I think at this point I'm just going to do that. And yeah, yet again, another artist where every time she comes out with something, I'm going to be there day one to pick it up and listen to it. And yeah, I have so many things that I could say complimentary about Kacey Musgraves that I haven't said, but I think we're going to end it here. And yeah, if you guys haven't listened to Kacey Musgraves, maybe because you're put off by country music, please don't let that dissuade you, because I really think that Kacey Musgraves is one of the best examples in that genre, just in general, but certainly by today's standards. And at number 7, you knew she had to be on the list at some point. Of course, I am talking about Queen Bee herself, Beyonce. Such a impactful figure from a cultural standpoint, the likes that I don't think we have quite seen. Yet again, you could throw Taylor Swift into the argument, and I think from a mass appeal, I think she certainly has more of a cultural impact. But Beyonce, I think, has a cultural impact in a more profound way. Of course, you know, being a black woman first and foremost, but also, you know, you look at what happened when Formation came out, that single. I mean, Red Lobster's sales just plummeted overnight, you know? And I think what really makes Beyonce stand out, to me at least, above Taylor Swift in that regard from a cultural standpoint. I hate to keep comparing them, but I feel like being a black woman, sometimes she doesn't get as much credit from the overall population. I mean, we just saw what happened with her 2 latest country singles being refused to be played by racist radio stations until they had to relent because of all the backlash. And then Dolly Parton hopping on and, of course, supporting her with all the love that you'd expect someone like Dolly Parton to give. And I think she really has something to say, especially in her later work, because I enjoy her early albums. I don't think that there's like a bad album that she has at all, but yet again, it's very pop-centric fare, isn't really saying a lot, you know, except outside of, you know, a hit here or there like Irreplaceable. But of course, I mean, you gotta love singles like Crazy in Love, Dangerously in Love too. I mean, the list goes on from that early run of her career, but I think it's really when you get to her self-titled album and Lemonade, where she really turned the tides around and changed the music overnight. I mean, yet again, it's hard not to see the impact of albums like those, especially in the way she embraced her sexuality so openly as a woman, and no one really criticized her for it, because this is something Madonna had been doing years before, but Beyonce was the one who kind of escaped a lot of the scrutiny that a lot of people who came before her didn't. And, you know, that's a huge, huge moment in history, I think, certainly in an accepting sense. But also Lemonade is such a great conceptual record, dealing with so many themes, of course, you know, with Jay-Z's infidelity, and it gave her so much to talk about, but also just such an empowering album too, talking about a lot of really, really important issues. And I feel like that has been permeated through all her work since. Even if Renaissance was a bit more fluffy, you could say, I appreciate the intention behind it. And of course, I mean, if you saw my review of Renaissance, a film by Beyonce, you can really see all the hard work that was still poured into that album. And of course the tour and the stage production there, which is honestly some of the best I've ever seen. Beyonce is one of the hardest working people in the music industry in general. And I think even if you aren't in love with her music, I think it's kind of ridiculous to call her overrated, because someone who is working at such this level to deliver to not only her fans, but to create something purposeful and meaningful that will last well beyond our lifetimes. I really think Beyonce deserves all the credit in the world. I think one of the greatest entertainers we've ever had, just from stage presence alone, but yet again, the craft that's on display and everything she does, and of course the amount of care and humility she puts into a lot of her music. I mean, she works hard for a reason, and she stays that way because she has a good head on her shoulders. And yeah, I gotta give all the praise in the world to Beyonce, and yeah, definitely have to have Beyonce on this type of list. And at number 6 is an artist who I've been profoundly influenced by in a lot of ways, and that of course is Miss Erykah Badu. Oh my goodness, I mean, she really is the mother of neo-soul music. I really think, of course, you know, you have Lauryn Hill coming out with Miseducational Lauryn Hill, which is such a groundbreaking record, but Erykah Badu has always been in the game, and I think the first one to truly innovate what that genre was, combining R&B, soul music with hip-hop in such a cool, laid-back sort of way, but telling all these, you know, wonderful parables about, you know, the black experience, and also just some incredibly profound life lessons along the way. Of course, with songs like Apple Tree and The Other Side of the Game. Really monumental tracks from a storytelling and songwriting perspective. And of course, you gotta love songs like On and On, of course. Myself keep it moving like a rolling stone. You know, it's just such a cool voice too. She almost sounds like a cross between Billie Holiday and something otherworldly. I don't know how to describe it. But she really brings those kind of bluesy sensibilities to this genre as well, in such a creative mind, especially from a production standpoint. You listen to something like Mama's Gun, which I think is one of the greatest albums ever. And that album, to me, is definitely a blueprint of something I want to look at and kind of break down and take a lot of inspiration from, because she's doing so many things from a musical level that are so diverse and so interesting. Songs like Orange Moon just absolutely blow my mind. And she's really such a creative soul, more than anything. And by all accounts, an amazing human being too. Very interesting to say the least. But I really think Erykah Badu pushed so many boundaries in music that hadn't really been pushed before. And I think her sound, her style, everything about Erykah Badu is absolutely brilliant. And yet again, she hasn't done anything in a while, but I'm always very excited to hear what she's up to. And yeah, just one of the most wonderful artists of all time. And now we've cracked into the top 5 on this list. And who more iconic can I put at number 5 than, of course, the Queen of Pop herself, Madonna? I mean, what can I say about Madonna that hasn't been said already? I think one of the most widely recognizable and influential figures in pop, certainly in the 80s, I'd say after Prince and Michael Jackson, Madonna pushed so many boundaries, especially for women, that it's kind of hard to fathom what the landscape of music would have been without her influence, because she really pushed what you could talk about from certainly a sexual manner, and what you could talk about in your song. I mean, just from Like a Virgin alone was such a groundbreaking single, and on top of that, it's just packaged so well with such an incredibly poppy sound that I still think is being looked at today, and I think such a template for success. Of course, then you got so many great songs like a Prayer, which I think is her greatest achievement, one of the greatest songs of all time, bringing the sensuality of sex and merging that with something so spiritual like gospel music. It almost seems sacrilege, but yet the song is such a powerful statement on both. And of course, I mean, just that hook is so iconic. Life is a mystery. I mean, come on, everybody knows that song. Everybody and their mother, and maybe even their grandmother. But I think, yet again, Madonna moved in so many interesting artistic directions, especially when she got to the 90s and really started pushing dance music into the forefront on albums like Ray of Light, which I think is by far her greatest achievement from an artistic standpoint, and got so introspective in ways that maybe her earlier hits didn't in the early 80s. But yet again, she did so much. Of course, the controversial Sex Book, which is, you know, something that's still, you know, widely discussed amongst Madonna fans, and it's certainly from a cultural standpoint, she didn't really care what anyone thought about what she did in her art. And I think Madonna has had such a profound impact on popular music and really broke the doors wide open for so many more female-centric, open-mindedness, feminist sort of artists like Janet Jackson, for instance, who really embraced a lot of that sexuality that Madonna helped put on the table, and show women that, yes, this is something you can talk about, and this is something that is a part of all of our lives, even if a lot of people in the general population think this is taboo or try to suppress it. This is a part of us, and this is something that we should be able to feel free about and open about. And I think, yet again, so many empowering messages for women in all of her songs. And yeah, I mean, how can you not appreciate Madonna as an absolute cultural and musical icon? Just absolutely incredible career. And coming in at number 4 is someone who I would not say is nearly as iconic as Madonna, but I think from an artistic standpoint, I think has made some of the most impactful, creative, and groundbreaking albums by any female artist of all time, and that is Bjork, of course, the Icelandic singer-songwriter who really pushed trip-hop into the foreground with albums like Post, Homogenic, and of course Vespertine, which I think is one of the greatest albums of all time. And she combined so many interesting musical influences, pushed so many boundaries from a sonic standpoint that I don't even think many artists can even match. Because yet again, her songs are very unconventional, and so is certainly her voice, which not everybody is a fan of. I think from a technical standpoint, she has an incredible voice. I don't think that can be denied, whether you like it or not. I completely understand. But at the same time, what she's doing on these songs, they're so abstract, but yet they're filled with so much layers and meaning to it. And to break down a whole Bjork song is kind of a task within itself, but such a gratifying one at that. And yet again, of course, talking about her experiences as a woman, and of course the sensual pleasures of sex in many ways, like on Vespertine mainly, but she talks about so many different aspects of the human experience as well in such an unconventional way that it really does make you think in a lot of ways, and I think from a musical standpoint really draws you into these amazing lush sonic soundscapes that really nobody will ever sound like her, I don't think. And I really admire her ambition as an artist and those types of electronic sounds integrated with so many interesting things on later albums. I mean, she's even using a music box, for crying out loud, on Vespertine. That should tell you how out there she is stylistically, but I think, yet again, stylistically, she's in fact one in a million, and I really do look at Bjork as a huge influence on me because I want to be able to incorporate electronic music like that in such an interesting way. I think everyone should look at Bjork as an influence in that regard. If you're trying to really push some boundaries and create something interesting in combining different sounds into your work, I mean, you can't really look further than Bjork, and you can't really look at any better example than her. And coming in at number 3, you knew she had to be on the list, and that, of course, is Joanie Mitchell. I mean, who doesn't love Joanie Mitchell? I mean, come on. Joanie Mitchell is an international music and cultural icon that everyone still loves to this day. I mean, even from her latest Grammy performance or her comeback at the Newport Folk Festival a few years ago, she is widely adored by literally everybody in the industry, and certainly by music fans. I think she's probably one of the... Well, I think she is the greatest female songwriter of all time, and I think definitely top 10 songwriters in the history of the medium. I mean, just how poetically she speaks in her songs. It's so individual, and yet again coalesces with her brilliance as a person. I mean, you hear this woman talk, and you understand that these two are one and the same, you know, her music and her mind. And I think creates some of the most intrinsically beautiful songs ever made. I mean, look no further than Blue. I mean, one of the most iconic albums of all time, especially when you think of female singer-songwriters. You know, songs like Little Green, I mean, such a heart-breaking and achingly emotional song about having to give up her child, or, you know, something like the emotional nakedness of the river. I mean, to put yourself in such a critical stance is an amount of introspection that I don't think a lot of artists reach, and yet she does so brilliantly, and has yet again talk about Bjork. I mean, Joanie Mitchell has experimented in so many different venues and styles of music. I mean, just listen from the folk sensibilities of Blue to Court and Spark, which has much more jazzy freeform air about it. And yet again, it's still 100% Joanie Mitchell all the way, and what she's singing about, how she's writing these songs, what she's talking about. But it's just so refreshing to see the vastness of her career, and also just what a wonderful vocalist. I mean, you hear Joanie Mitchell's voice and you immediately know it's her. Has such an amazing, like, mezzo-soprano voice that really hasn't been matched to this day, at least in regards to timbre. And so much can be said about Joanie Mitchell that I suppose has already been said, but I really think she's one of the most profound and impactful songwriters of the 20th century and onward. I think Joanie Mitchell is a landmark artist that everyone looks to, especially if you're a budding songwriter. I mean, you really can't get much more genius than her. And I think any list without Joanie Mitchell would almost feel invalid. You know, I think one of the best artists to ever exist in music, and certainly deserving to be this high on the list. And at number 2 on this list, this might actually be a bit of a shock to a lot of you, considering how much I've talked about how much I love this artist over the years on this channel, and that's Aretha Franklin. Yeah, I know, not number 1, right? Kind of crazy, and we'll get into that. But, I mean, come on. Bar to none, the greatest vocalist in the history of pop music. Nobody could sing as good as Aretha, and I don't think anybody has sang as great since. I mean, this woman's voice was a gift from God in a way that we have never seen, and yet again brought so much passion into literally every single song she sang, no matter if it was not to the same quality as some of her best songs. But I also think Aretha Franklin was one of the absolute greatest interpreters of American music. I mean, just listen to her cover of an Otis Redding song, which is Respect. I mean, people do not think about that as an Otis Redding song, even though he was the guy who wrote it. And I think, of course, I think most people would agree in some regard, maybe even to the extent that Respect is the greatest song in the history of popular music. And I certainly think it's the most significant from a cultural standpoint. Here comes a strong black woman demanding respect from this man, you know, who she's obviously providing for, and turned what was an already great song into such a powerful, iconic, and timeless feminist anthem. I mean, there's nothing like it. But then you look at the rest of her songs too, like Think, Chain of Fools, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. The list goes on. And yet again, with pipes like that, you know, such an iconic vocalist that nobody can turn away from listening to her sing. And someone who, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but I think the time she was around brought so much amazing and iconic body of work to the canon of music in general, and certainly soul music. I mean, her and Otis Redding really reared that genre in a totally new direction that I still think is the definitive definition when you think of soul music. And I think more than anybody, you think of Aretha Franklin first and foremost. I mean, she is the queen for a reason, and I don't think that you can get much better than Aretha. But of course, there is one artist that I have above her. And you might be wondering, who is that, Nathaniel? Well, I'll tell you guys in just a second, because this is an artist who I really wouldn't have put this high until going through her catalog recently. I think probably the oldest, well, definitely the oldest artist on this list, and I think the one that has, you know, withstood the test of time more than any of them, except maybe Aretha. But yet again, to my point, how long this woman's music has stayed iconic is truly a testament to her greatness, and that, of course, is none other than Mrs. Ella Fitzgerald. probably the greatest jazz singer of all time. Well, maybe not technically the greatest singer. There might be a couple more voices stand out in that regard, but certainly the best jazz artist in that vein of those jazz singers that we've all come to know and love. I mean, Ella Fitzgerald had literally the perfect voice. Never sang a note out of tune. And if you listen to some of her scat singing, it is wild how perfectly you can sing in that style. I didn't know you could scat sing without missing a single note until I listened to Ella Fitzgerald. But yet again, the way she interprets the American songbook, I think, is unlike any other artist, especially the arrangements that are brought to a lot of her songs. I mean, look no further than Ella Fitzgerald sings the Cole Porter Songbook, which I think, quite frankly, is my favorite album by any female artist in history, that I just listened to a few weeks ago and was blown away by. 2 hours of music, and literally every song, for the most part, is phenomenal. And I think that's such a testament to, yet again, her sensibilities. And just the way she turns phrase is so beyond believable. And yet again, just such a sweet, soulful, and perfect type of voice that I don't think there are many singers like Ella Fitzgerald out there that exist. And maybe not even before her or after. Like, really, Ella Fitzgerald is such an amazing, amazing artist who never fails to impress me every time I put on a record of hers. I mean, what else is there to say except, in my opinion, Ella Fitzgerald is easily my favorite. Well, I wouldn't say easily. Aretha's right there, of course, but my favorite female artist of all time. And certainly, if you haven't gotten to Ella Fitzgerald yet, you definitely should, because I know so many people who are my age, or a bit older, or even a bit younger, who absolutely love Ella Fitzgerald. And for someone who was born in the latter end of the 1910s, I mean, that is a hell of an impressive accomplishment to still say so relevant and within the eye of mainstream music to this day. Yet again, amazing, amazing artist, and I think very deserved at the top spot on this list here. So yeah, guys, those are my favorite 10 female artists of all time. Of course, this list is always subject to change, but if you ask me today, this is my opinion and who I think is the best. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below if you like this list, and also let me know perhaps what your top 10 favorite female artists, who they may be, and whatnot. I'd love to start a discussion down in the comments below about it. So many great female artists who have really shifted what music can be that I didn't even get into. I mean, I've only scratched the surface, but I think a lot of these people that I put on here are really the cream of the crop, and I think a lot of people would agree for the most part. So yeah, guys, if you like what I'm doing here, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Going to have special videos like this from time to time. I love it when I get a chance to sit down and do something like this, and I thought, what a better day and no better excuse to do this video. And yeah, guys, stay on the lookout, of course, if you're a music fan and you're coming here for the first time. Of course, there's only a few days left to do it. But speaking of Ella Fitzgerald, top 50 albums of the 50s, she's got a lot of them, like Ella Fitzgerald Sings the Cole Porter Songbook, that you should absolutely listen to. And if you're interested in submitting a list, I'll put a link up here to the announcement video so you can kind of get a rundown of the rules and whatnot, and would be beyond happy if you guys contributed to that series. And yeah, of course, my top 10 films of 2023, that video is coming in a couple of days. I've been working on it diligently, and I really cannot wait to share with you guys what my whole year leads up to, and what I love doing more than anything, watching amazing films. So yeah, guys, stay on the lookout for that and more, and until the next video, you have yourselves a good one, and have yourselves a very happy International Women's Day. Take it easy, guys.